Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to my channel. It's a rainy Tuesday night. Tama ba Tuesday? Yes, it's a rainy Tuesday night, and I'd like to greet everyone, and I hope you're all seated comfortably, somewhere warm and somewhere cozy, because it's a bad weather. But tonight we are gonna be thinking despite the bad weather. So tonight it's all about Thinking Tuesdays, and we are going to talk about, are you an emotional thinker or a logical thinker? But before that, I'd like to greet everyone. Once again, good evening, and good evening to my side of the world, to the people in my side of the world. Good evening to you. And to those who are watching replays, thank you so much for watching the replay. I really appreciate you guys. Please drop some comments if you wish. You can definitely interact with me. You can send me a private message if you're too shy to post on the comment section. You can also suggest topics if you have topics that you want me to talk about, or some people who I can invite as guests on my channel. So, again, good evening and welcome to Thinking Tuesdays. The topic for tonight is, are you an emotional thinker or a logical thinker? I'm Irene, a real estate broker in the Philippines. I'm also a motivational speaker and a writer. I will be talking about being an emotional thinker or a logical thinker. So if you can relate to this conversation, don't hesitate to do so. If you wanna join the conversation, just do it. This podcast episodes are for you, and I really appreciate it if we can interact with each other. Anyway, we'll start with oopsies. What happened there? Okay, okay. So we'll start with emotional thinker. When we talk about emotional thinker, it means that they are less influenced or swayed by facts and prefer listening to their hearts instead of their minds. So that's from a source, from ComSage. So when you are emotional, you are someone who is less influenced by facts. You prefer to use your heart instead of your mind. And you probably already know this by now that, well, in most circumstances, especially when you are in love, you become an emotional thinker. Hi, Rizzy. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, thank you. Okay, so, di ba pag na-in love tayo, isasama ko na yung sarili ko kasi, di ba, hindi tayo pwede magpanggap. Okay, so pag na-in love tayo, most of the time, we feel that we tend to believe people. Kahit na may gut feel tayo na parang hindi naman sila nagsasabi ng totoo, pero kasi mahal mo, 'di ba? Yun yung usual na sinasabi natin kasi mahal natin. That's why we don't pay attention to facts, but we pay attention to our hearts more. Hello, Team Team Samoranos. Thank you so much for tuning in. So it's a sir or a ma'am ba? Hi, thank you for tuning in. Okay, hindi ko kasi makita yung picture. Medyo maliit yung screen ko. So, hi there. Thank you so much for tuning in. All right. So, a logical thinker, on the other hand, is a person who is firm and fair with their decisions, and they value truth and logic. Hello po, good evening. Thank you. Okay, so firm and fair with their decisions, and they value truth and logic. So doon sila sa totoo, doon sila sa may dahilan. Yun yung mga logical thinkers. So when we talk about girl, ay hello Miss Tim. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, so when we talk about a logical thinker, it's more of the head, it's more of the brain. But when we talk about the emotional thinker, it's more of the heart. So alam naman natin, di ba? Logic, heart, logic, brain, emotions, heart. Pero there are studies that's saying, di ba, that actually emotions is also a part of the brain. Kasi nga, it's the hypothalamus, if I'm not mistaken, with the part of the brain that dictates our emotions. So actually, technically, when you say emotions, it's still coming from the brain. So yun. So yun yung pinaka scientific explanation. But then again, because we are talking about the difference between logical and emotional, sige, let's stick with the logic is from the brain and emotion is from the heart. All right. So, ano ba ang pros of being an emotional thinker? What are the pros of being an emotional thinker? The first one is you have empathy. And as you know, empathy is putting yourself in the shoes of another person. This is a pro because um when you know how other people feel, even though hindi mo naman talaga pinagdadaanan yung pinagdadaanan nila, even though you are not going through the same situation as they are going through, you know that you cannot celebrate while they are mourning. So that's how empathy works. You know that you cannot celebrate while somebody else is mourning. You're putting yourself in the other person's shoes, but you don't really have to mourn with them. So that's what it means by empathy. Sympathy, on the other hand, if somebody's crying, you also cry with them. But doesn't work like that. So empathy is really from an emotional thinker, and it's good because you don't have to go through something to understand something that people are going through. Okay. Another another pro of being an emotional thinker is that because you are practicing empathy, you're also sensitive towards other people. And that's good because at least you know how to treat them well. You know if they're upset, you know if they're happy. At least you have this heightened feeling of how to understand them because you are sensitive towards what they feel. Okay, naghang yung screen ko. Okay, so the next one is you can read the room. Okay, there you go. It's not working. Okay, so when you can read the room, that means that you can feel whatever is going on in the room. So just imagine going through a room and there's a conflict, there's an emotional battlefield going on in a room. You wouldn't be there celebrating because you know that there's something going on. So when you can read the room as an emotional thinker, you know that um, there would be times that you would be walking on eggshells, and that's fine because you know how everybody else feels. And that's a pro of being an emotional thinker because you wouldn't be saying the wrong words at the wrong time. So that's one of the pros of being an emotional thinker. Hello, Sir Joseph. Thank you so much for tuning in. Ayan, na-late ka ng konti dun, ah. Okay. Next is in terms of love, okay, pro din naman when somehow it's also a pro if you're an emotional thinker because in terms of love, you know how to care for the other person in terms of their emotions. So hindi ka basta-bastang makakasakit ng damdamin ng ibang tao kasi nga emotional thinker ka. So nararamdaman mo nararamdaman mo yung nararamdaman ng ibang tao. So yung ayaw mo iparamdam sa kanila, hindi mo ipaparamdam kasi nga you know exactly what they're going through. So that's another pro when it comes to love and you're an emotional thinker, you know how to take care of people emotionally. Okay. What are the cons of being an emotional thinker? Okay, the first one is, pasensya na po sa mga tatamaan dyan. Parang may inaabangan akong audience, wala pa siya. Okay, so poor judgment. What does it mean by poor judgment? Well, people who are driven by emotions usually have poor judgment because they are using their emotions more than they use the logic. So, ang nangyayari, nagkakaroon sila ng mga maling decisions sa buhay. And I'm not saying this because I haven't experienced it. I haven't experienced this. I'm saying this because I have experienced this. And when you are an emotional thinker, when you're young, especially when you're young, you tend to be super emotional. And also another scenario where people are emotional is when they are going through, a hormonal turmoil, just like women. Every time they have their monthly thing. Okay? So, before that na yung mga babae, madalas magkakaroon ng mga emotional turmoil, mga fluctuations ng hormones, ganyan. So, nagkakaroon ng um, either either an increase in emotions or a decrease in emotions, whatever is going on there. So ang nangyayari, nagkakaroon ng poor judgment. That's why if you can determine if you're an emotional thinker or a logical thinker, at least you can improve yourself. Okay? So kasi ang isang con ng isang emotional thinker is poor judgment. And we know that as adults, we have to have very good judgment kasi we are already decision makers. We are already deciding on our own, and maybe we're also deciding for our jobs. We have positions in the office which need a lot of decision making. So if you are an emotional thinker, that's a con in terms of decision making kasi hinder yung judgment natin. Oh, another con of being an emotional thinker is we don't have boundaries when we are becoming emotional. So sometimes we tend to forget that we have to have boundaries, work, personal life, and because we tend to be emotional, ang nangyayari, we are crossing those borders. And one example is, you bringing your family issues at work or you bringing your work issues at home. Walang boundaries eh. Kasi masyado mong dinidibdib or dinadamdam yung pinagdadaanan mo. So, ang nangyayari, nako-cross mo yung mga borders na hindi naman dapat. So, that's why, I'm not sure if I've said this in previous episodes, but that's why, di ba, there's this very common there's this very common Filipino advice that if you are going to work, please leave your problems at the door. Kasi hindi mo dapat dala yung problema mo sa bahay, dadalhin mo sa office mo, or yung problema mo sa office mo, dadalhin mo sa bahay. So that's what it means by no boundaries when you are an emotional thinker. By the way, hi everyone. I know there are a lot of people watching, and to those people who are silent in the audience, thank you so much for tuning in. Please join the conversations if you feel that you can relate to it, or maybe you can also send your comments or your highs and hellos, or you can also post where you're watching from if you're not comfortable to join the conversation. I just would like to know who are there in the audience. Hello there. Hope you're all safe and sound and comfortably seated somewhere out there. Okay, another con of being an emotional thinker is you become emotionally invested. And this is very common as well. I know as Filipinos, by the way, it's common for us to be emotionally invested. I'm not sure with other cultures, but with us kasi we are a friendly race. We tend to build friendships at work, we tend to build friendships in our community, and that's okay. I think that's perfectly fine for as long as you know that you still have your boundaries, you still have your limits. However, the con of being an emotional thinker is when you become emotionally invested in something and you forget that you still have boundaries that you shouldn't cross. Okay, so for example, in the workplace, kapag masyado kayong close with your colleagues, minsan hindi mo siya mapuna sa mga trabaho niya kasi close kayo eh. Kumbaga, you are emotionally invested. Hindi mo na siya mapagsabihan. For example, yung teammate mo, hindi mo na papagsabihan kasi nga masyado ka nang emotionally attached to that person na nakakalimutan mo na nandyan kayo sa work because you have to work, because you have an organizational goal that you have to hit. However, dahil nga nagiging emotionally invested ka, nahirapan ka mag-correct ng actions ng ibang tao sa office mo kasi ayaw mo na, kasi natatakot ka baka ma-offend sila. So, that's an example. Okay, another con of being an emotional thinker is when you're down, you're really down. And when we say you're really down, meaning kapag may pinagdadaanan ka, hirap na hirap kang dumaan. Kasi nga, emotional thinker ka, feeling mo katapusan na ng mundo, feeling mo, alam mo yun, yung mga ganong feeling. Pagka may pinagdadaanan ka, because you tend to be overwhelmed by emotions when you are an emotional thinker. So, yeah, there's nothing wrong with being an emotional thinker for as long as you can actually manage, you can still balance what kind of thinking you need to do depending on the circumstances. Okay, meron pang isa. Thank you, Rizzy, for the validation. Thank you for that. Okay, another con of being an emotional thinker is yung fear-based yung logic. So, okay, I don't know how to say this. I don't know what kind of example I can give, but just to be very simple about it. 'Di ba yung mga sa sales. Ako I'm not saying this to put sales in a bad light, but it's a very common technique no na ginagamit which I may or may not agree with, but that's not the point here. The point is it's being used in sales. So, ang gagawin is, paano na lang kung mamatay ka bukas, hindi mo to nabili, yung mga ganyan. So, nangyayari, it's a fear-based logic. So, nagde-decide ka based on fear. And fear, as you know, is an emotion. So, nagkakaroon ka ng dahilan, pero ang gamit mo pa rin is emosyon, which makes sense most of the time, but somehow, it also makes us decide with poor judgment, using poor judgment. Kasi dapat pag nagde-decide tayo, it's logic-based, not fear-based logic. Okay? So, I hope that's you figured out the big difference between the two. So pag magde-decide ka, logic, hindi dahil natatakot ka, di ba? See. So let's talk about the pros naman of being a logical thinker. So siguro by now you can already figure out if you are an emotional thinker. So now we proceed to the pros of being a logical thinker. Okay, so when we talk about logical thinkers, they reduce the chances of error because they are based on facts, numbers, figures, statistics, you name it, they have it. So that's the pro of being a logical thinker. Okay, walang masyadong emosyon, nakabase sila sa katotohanan, nakabase sila sa reasoning. Okay? Speaking of reasoning, they have good reasoning skills and they will not use your emotions against you. Pag-uusapan nila, ang pag-uusapan nila or ang ifo-focus nila is yung reason. Ano ba yung katotohanan? Ano ba yung truth? Ano ba yung fact? When it comes to discussion of any matter at hand. Next is they also have high high quality decisions. Sorry, nagahang yung connection ko. Naka-next slide na ako, hindi pa siya nag-next. Ayan, tumugman. Okay, so high quality decisions. Ano ibig sabihin ng high quality decisions? Because people who use their minds to decide have more or less have high quality decisions. Ibig sabihin pinag-isipan nila ng maayos base sa factual discourse. They will not decide based on kung ano lang yung nafi-feel nila. Ano yung kagandahan nito when it comes to the workplace? When it comes to the workplace, hindi nila masyadong papansinin kung ano yung nararamdaman mo. Papansinin nila, may mapapala ba tayo sa desisyon na to? Will it be for the greater good? Ano yung numbers na makikita natin when we implement this one and that one? So, ang nangyayari, it's a high quality decision. It's not something that it's randomly felt or kasi as you know, I've mentioned this in a previous episode, emotions are something that's changing. Okay? So, pabago-bago. So, kapag ka logical thinker ka, hindi mo mababago yung facts. So, which is actually good because you cannot change facts. And when you decide based on facts, it's a high quality decision because you know that whatever the basis of your decision is, it's something that cannot be changed because it's factual. And at the same time, you know that it's the right thing because you are basing your decisions on the truth. Okay? Naghang ulit siya. And in terms of love, ay, bitaw din. Diba yung medyo nagde-delay yung natin, visuals. Okay, and when it comes to love, if you're a logical thinker, ito yung example ha. When you're an emotional thinker and you're in love, yung mga gifts mo, ito, regalo, sa simpleng mga regalo lang, kita mo agad yung mga emotional tsaka logical thinker eh. Pag emotional thinker, ang maririnig mo sa kanila is magugustuhan nila yan. Emotional ka eh, magugustuhan. And gusto or the feeling of want is an is a feeling of it's something that's emotional. Pero kapag ka logical thinker yung magreregalo, magagamit kaya nila yan. Di ba? Very practical. So, hindi sila magreregalo ng isang bagay na hindi magagamit ng pagreregaluhan nila. Like, I wouldn't give flowers. Yung mga logical thinker, hindi sila magreregalo sa'yo ng bulaklak. Ang ireregalo nila sila sa'yo, baka sako ng bigas, ganyan. Kasi logical sila eh. Ano nga bang gagawin mo sa bulaklak? Okay, magugustuhan mo, pero after a few days, malalanta siya. Hindi mo naman siya pwedeng kainin. Hindi mo naman siya pwedeng ipa-frame unless what's that ba, preserve mo, di ba? So logical thinkers, when they're in love, what they do is they're really practical. They will give you reasons, no? Reasons to love them, and as well as they will be giving you gifts. Kung magi-gift man sila, yung magagamit mo. So yun yung sign nila ng love nila para sa iyo. So that's how logical thinkers love or fall in love or show their love. Ala, yung asawa ko ganyan, logical thinker, ako naman yung emotional. Actually, karamihan ng lalaki, logical thinker. Karamihan ng babae, emotional thinker, because that's how our brains are wired. Okay. Karamihan lang naman. Hindi ko sinasabing lahat. Okay. Ano naman yung cons ng pagiging logical thinker? Okay, ano yung disadvantages ng logical thinker? Well, logical thinkers will argue with you easily kasi they know that they're on the right side of things. Okay? Kasi yung mga logical thinkers, they will usually be on the right side of things. Kasi ibabase nga nila yung decision nila sa facts tsaka sa truths, sa mga katotohanan, di ba? So, alam nila na nasa tama sila. So, they will argue with you easily. They will push it. They will push it talaga. If they know that they're on the right side, they will argue with you. And they will tell you that, well, you're on the wrong side of the fence. Okay? Another con of being a logical thinker is they are emotionally detached. Okay? Ano ibig sabihin ng emotionally detached? Minsan, makikita ninyo sa mga tao, sa mga logical thinkers, hindi nga sila masyadong showy ng emotions nila kasi nga logical sila. So parang gagawin nila yung mga bagay-bagay dahil may magandang dahilan yon. Hindi dahil gusto nilang matuwa ka or something. They won't do that. What logical thinkers would focus on the outcome. Ano ba yung magiging outcome ng decision or ng actions na ginagawa nila? Okay, they will not always consider happiness or love or whatever emotion there is. They would base their decisions on something that makes sense. Okay, and love doesn't always make sense. Kaya yung yung mga logical thinker, parang hindi sila showy kasi hindi nila magets ba't kailangan mag-holding hands while walking. Walang sense, okay? Pero pag sinabi mo sa kanilang, kailangan nating mag-holding hands while walking, hindi dahil patwitams ka or patwitams. Halata yung edad ko doon. Okay, hindi dahil patitams ka, kundi sasabihin mo, kasi hindi ako marunong tumawid. Kailangan mong hawakan yung kamay ko pag tumatawid ako. Then they will hold your hand. Because it makes sense. Hawakan ko yung kamay mo kasi may sense eh. Baka masagasaan ka or whatever. Diba? So, ganon. Kaya, they come off as emotionally detached. Mukha silang walang pakiramdam or walang feelings. Okay? Asawa ko talaga yan, kakaloka. Sobrang di showy. Okay. Oo nga, mga logical thinkers, they're not showy. Okay. Next is, again, syempre, dahil they're emotionally detached, they can also come off as insensitive. Wala kang pakiramdam. Hindi mo ba alam na gutom na ako? Nakasimangot na kaya ako? Tapos sasabihin ng logical thinker sa inyo, ba't di mo sinabi? Puwede mo namang sabihin na nagugutom ka pala. Hindi mo ba nakita yung facial expressions ko? Nagugutom na ako, yun sasabihin ng emotional thinker. Kasi nga, yung mga emotional thinker, sensitive sila. Eh, yung logical thinkers, eh, sana sinabi mo na lang. Ganun ganun sa kanila kasimple yun. Kung nagugutom ka, sabihin mong nagugutom ka. 'Pag galit ka, sabihin mong naggagalit ka. Kapagka may gusto kang gawin, sabihin mong may gusto kang gawin. They will not figure you out kung ano yung gusto mo. They will only um, get what you're saying by face value. So kung ano yung pinakita mo, for example, pinakita mong masaya ka, edi masaya ka. Yung mga logical thinkers, okay, masaya siya. Pagka nakita na malungkot ka, sasabihin ng logical thinkers, pagtingin sa'yo, okay, malungkot siya. Hindi ko siya kakausapin kasi malungkot siya. Or, masaya siya. O sige, pwede ko siyang kausapin. Right? So, that's why logical thinkers can come off as insensitive kasi isipin ng mga emotional thinkers, wala ka bang pakiramdam? Okay. Another thing, another con or another disadvantage of being a logical thinker is they are quick to turn down others. Mabilis silang mag-say ng no. Kasi nga, their decisions are based on logic. And if it doesn't make sense to them, they will tell you that they don't make sense. So, kung emotional thinker nakipag-usap sa logical thinker, baka ma-offend sila. Kasi si logical thinker, sasabihin niya sa'yo, no, hindi ko gusto yung gagawin. Hindi ko yan gagawin kasi walang sense. So, akala nila, nire-reject sila for no reason at all. But on the contrary, the logical thinker, ide-decline ka niya kasi meron siyang very good reason for turning you down. Another con of being a logical thinker is, yan, short-sighted siya at times. Pero hindi naman lagi. Well, kasi bakit siya tinatawag na short-sighted? Hindi niya nakikita yung mga bagay-bagay. Nakikita niya lang kung anong ano ba tawag dun? Nakahatag sa harap niya. Kung ano lang yung nakikita niya, yun lang yun. Tapos dun siya magbabase. Kasi logical thinker, by the way, they will not overanalyze things based on what they feel. They will only analyze things based on what they see. So, kasi nga, di ba, logic is also coming from your senses. So, whatever they see, they will take it at face value. So, doon sila magde-decide based on what they see. So, ang nangyayari, they can be short-sighted. They do not know what's really, sometimes they do not see the big picture. Minsan nakikita lang nila yung kung ano lang yung facts na alam nila. So again, it's just sometimes. It doesn't happen all the time, but you get what I'm saying, right? Okay. So, ano ba yung dahilan bakit natin pinag-usapan tong emotional thinker or logical thinker? Because balanced emotions are crucial to intuitive decision making. Important for us na balanse tayo when it comes to decision making. And for most of us, as adults, as professionals, as people who are already working, it's essential for us to decide not only based on our emotions but based on logic. So when do we decide based on logic and when do we decide based on emotions? That's a bigger question. Um, okay. To put it very simply, depende kasi yan sa circumstances. We cannot just be emotional thinkers all the time. We cannot be logical thinkers all the time. It has to be balanced. So if you are in a situation or in a circumstance that needs you to be an emotional thinker, then you have to switch from your logical thinker side to your emotional thinker side. Eh ngayon naman, kung sa tingin mo kailangan mo mag-decide based on logic, edi dun ka naman sa logical thinker. So, I'm sharing this podcast episode with you because this is something that's personal to me. I've always labeled myself as someone who's a logical thinker. And a lot of people have misinterpreted me because of that, because people tend to think that I'm insensitive or that I don't care so much about emotions because I'm not a showy person. Um, and I will usually take whatever you say at face value. So pag sinabi mo, Irene, galit ako sa'yo. Okay, galit ka sa akin. And knowing that I cannot do anything about it, I can say sorry if I believe I'm wrong, but I will not say sorry if I did not do anything wrong. Kasi nga logic, 'di ba? If it doesn't make sense, I will not do it. So over the years, I kept on improving myself because I know that I don't really deal well with emotions. When there's a high emotion in the room, I would usually tend to like walk away and then just come back once the emotions subside. Ganun kasi ang mga logical thinkers. If it doesn't make them feel comfortable, if it doesn't make sense, if it doesn't make a lot of sense, they will walk away from the scenario. So again, over the years, I've learned how to improve myself on being an emotional thinker sometimes, to know how to empathize and to know and to improve our emotional quotient. Kasi hindi lang naman puro talino yung kailangan natin, di ba? Kailangan din natin ng emotional quotient so that we are holistically developing as a person. Hindi po pwedeng dun lang sa lagi sa logic side, di ba? Sa logical side. Hi, Mabes! Thank you so much for tuning in. Ayun. So, that's what we mean by being an emotional or a logical thinker. May mga circumstance na kailangan nating maging emotional thinker para mas sensitive tayo towards people feelings. For example, at home, we tend to be more of an emotional thinker. Kasi syempre, kasama natin dun mga loved ones natin. Madalas, ang kailangan ng loved ones natin, pagkasama natin sila, is empathy, or, be sensitive to their needs. Pero kapag ka nasa work naman tayo, we tend to be um, more of a logical thinker. Kasi, syempre, decision making, we have to base our decisions on facts, on truths, on numbers, on figures, on statistics, whatever is needed for that decision in the company, then you really have to be a logical thinker. Pero minsan, sa workplace din natin, kailangan din natin maging emotional thinker, especially when we are dealing with our colleagues. Kung hindi work ang topic, kapag colleagues mo, for example, may problema yung colleague mo, 'di ba? Tapos ikaw yung teammate or maybe ikaw yung superior, dapat alam mo rin kung paano babalansehin at paano makikipag-usap sa mga teammates mo using your part of yourself, emotional part of yourself, or you're using your emotions as well. So hindi po pwede na, ano ba tawag dun sa Tagalog, hindi po pwedeng tuod tayo when it comes to, when it comes to dealing with people. Dapat meron tayong feelings din. Meron tayong empathy. We know how to put ourselves in other people's shoes when we are dealing with other people. We don't really have to cry with them when they're crying, but we have to know that we cannot celebrate if in front of someone who's crying or someone who's mourning. So that's how empathy works. Um, Hello, Sir Tayag. Thanks so much for tuning in. Ayan. So hopefully you were able to gain an insight or two from our podcast episode tonight. And I really would like to say thank you to all those who have been spending their 8 p.m. every single night in this podcast, in the podcast episodes. And I'd also like to thank those who have been sending me virtual hugs and prayers. Thank you so much. I know that I've been through a rough time last week, and it's really hard to be moving on with with things that have happened in the past week. But I'm thankful because there are a lot of people who are supporting me and who are emotional thinkers. Talagang maraming tao pa rin ang kayang magbalanse ng emotions and ng logic nila when they're talking with their loved ones or with their friends, with their family members. And yes, hi May. Thank you, thank you. Yes, that's true. Kailangan balance lang. So, just in case you don't know, paano mo ba malalaman? Just in case you don't know if you need to use your emotional thinker side or your logical thinker side, ito lang naman yung lagi nating kailangan tandaan when it comes to decision making. Will it be beneficial to you and for the people involved? So whatever is the answer to that question, yun yung ginagamit natin for decision making, 'di ba? Usually kasi hindi lang dapat ikaw yung magbe-benefit, dapat for a greater many. But again, depende sa circumstance. Okay, for example, kung nasa relationship ka na hindi na beneficial for you, then well, it's up to you. Now you have to use your logic on what you're supposed to do next. All right. So again, this is Thinking Tuesdays, and we talked about, are you an emotional thinker or a logical thinker? I hope you get an insight or two. And just in case you did, please share this video so that other people may also be able to relate, maybe, or this podcast episode might be of help to them. Well, we will never know until we share the video, right? And sa mga nanonood po ng replay, thank you so much to those who have been silently supporting this channel. I'm doing my best. I'm really, really doing my best to constantly do the podcast episodes. And to be quite honest about it, medyo mahirap nang maghanap ng mga topics. We've been doing research talaga ng research. Pero I really appreciate it if you can also recommend topics na sa tingin ninyo is interesting to you and to a certain group of people. I know that this is not for everyone kasi syempre, depende sa topic, di ba? But if you feel that there are topics that I haven't talked about yet, sige, post nyo lang sa page na to or even in this podcast episode, or you can also send me a private message through inbox or through WhatsApp. And yeah, and that's all. Help each other, raise each other up, and also think for the benefit and welfare of everyone around us. Sorry, ang kati ng ilong ko. Sorry na live. Walang cut yun. Okay. Hindi ko alam kung ano nangyayari sa ano. Parang, anyway, it change in weather, right? Okay, thank you everyone. Hope you're um comfortable and cozy wherever you are now. And hope to see you again tomorrow for another podcast episode. It's Empowerment Wednesdays. I'm not sure what's the topic because alam ko nakaprogram naman yung mga topics. Pero I'll see you again tomorrow at 8 p.m. And again, if you have recommended topics, don't hesitate to send me a message. This is Irene once again, and stay safe, stay healthy, stay comfortable, stay warm, especially in this rainy Tuesday night. And I'll see you again tomorrow. Bye, everyone. God bless you.